What if we could live in a world without plastic waste? If we had drugs against superbugs? And no more traffic problems? What if all these problems had already been solved millions of years ago by someone very small? They are nature's little superheroes. Insects. With about 6 million species, they're the most successful creatures on Earth. They make up more than 90% of the animals on our planet. They are specialists with superpowers. We can learn a lot from them. We just have to look very closely. It's early morning in the mountains near Montpellier in southern France. In summer, dawn is the best time to catch insects. Later in the day it gets too hot and they hide from the sun.
This is a special structure for this tree.
The German insect researcher Andreas Vilchinskas and his French colleague Arnaud Estu are on the hunt. Professor Andreas Vilchinskas is one of the world's leading insect biotechnology specialists. He's particularly interested in ladybirds because they have very powerful immune systems. Vilchinskas wants to discover their germ-busting secrets and use them for the development of new drugs. He's looking specifically for the Asian ladybird. I'm convinced that nature has already developed the best antibiotics. The question is, how do we find them? We need clever ideas. For example, we can look at evolutionary biology and wonder why the Asian ladybird is able to survive in this environment full of pathogens to which it's not adapted. It must have developed defense mechanisms, active ingredients that we can use to develop new drugs. The area around Montpellier is rich in insects. Local varieties of ladybirds interbreed with alien species, and species bred especially for biological pest control. When it becomes too hot to hunt insects, the two scientists return to the lab to analyze their catch. Arnaud Estu is an insect geneticist. He travels around the world to collect beetles. By looking at their DNA, he can determine how they have spread over time. These findings are important for Andreas Vilchinskas and his search for new drugs.
One like that, okay?
Okay.
Yes, ammonia and adalia. Yeah, if you want to have a look. Yes. Very big ammonias. Black and red, yeah.
Yeah. And here, very nice to see the two-spotted ladybird.
The Asian ladybird is not even listed in the older textbooks. It's new to Europe. It's easy to spot with its W-shaped mark above its head. It's also slightly bigger than its European relative. The number of dots varies greatly. It can even be black. Arnaud Estu was able to reconstruct how it spread around the world.
People in Europe got some ammonias for biocontrol, okay, in the 19th.
The Asian ladybird was introduced to Europe and America as a form of biological pest control. The aim was to fight aphids, because an Asian ladybird eats a few thousand of them during its lifetime. The green arrows show where and when the insect was artificially introduced for pest control. But in the early 2000s, something unexpected happened. The Asian ladybird began to spread uncontrollably and displace native species. It suddenly propagated, and we would like to know what caused this sudden worldwide spread. What enabled it to do that? What's its secret? That's what we want to find out. Andreas Vilčinskas will take some ladybirds to Germany to analyze them. Tufts University, Boston, USA. The so-called Silk Lab is one of the university's more exotic research departments. Here, everything revolves around silk, and around those producing this fascinating material, silkworms. Fiorenzo Omonetto joined Tufts University in 2005. Here, he began to get interested in silk research and started to see silkworms in a totally new light.
It's pretty amazing, actually, if you take a look at it. You can actually see the silk strand. So right now it's trying to spin. This is a 3D printer. This material that comes out of it has out of here has a third of the tensile strength of steel, and that it's beautiful.
Fiorenzo Omonetto is a professor of biomedical engineering. He's interested in the properties of the material silkworms produce. He believes that silk can help protect the environment and solve our plastic waste problem. And not only that, silk could soon replace many other man-made materials. Silkworms produce about 1 kilometer of silk to build their cocoons. Humans have used silk fibers for thousands of years to produce textiles. But now the Boston researchers have succeeded in transforming silk into a new material with breathtaking abilities. For this, the silk needs to be transformed back into a liquid, similar to the fluid the insect produces before it spins its thread. First, the researchers cut up the cocoons and dissolve them in an alkaline liquid. Then they extract the silk proteins over the course of several days. Until now, it's proven impossible to artificially manufacture the substance the insect produces in its glands. It's a mixture of silk fibers, an adhesive called sericin, and water. When the silkworm spins its thread, it removes the water from the silk liquid. The fibers and the sericin then stick together and form a light yet extremely strong thread.
You going to mug me?
I'm not going to mug you.
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Thank you very much.
Download Veely now.
In a certain sense, you go back to what the silkworm does, and so you take the native fibers and you bring them back to a liquid suspension of silk fibroin protein and water, and then depending on how the water evaporates or how you remove the water, how quickly, how slowly, and under what conditions, and what temperatures, you get different material outcomes. And so the material came together in very amazing technological formats. So you think about a lot of things and you try to connect them, and I think that's the beauty of working in this domain.
Similar to plastic, liquid silk can be shaped into lots of different forms. But first, the researchers try to spin a simple thread, just like the silkworm. The thread is carefully extracted from a drop and then wound onto a reel. But it keeps on tearing. So what does the silkworm do differently? Toulouse, France. Audrey Dussatour is on her way to work by bicycle. She doesn't own a car. She doesn't even have a driving license. And yet she's very much interested in traffic, but a very special kind of traffic. Audrey de Sautour studies the behavior of ants and the superior logistics of these insects. Ants never collide or get stuck in traffic jams. With her findings, Audrey wants to help solve human traffic problems. If she needs new research subjects, she only needs to go round the back of her institute. The building sits on top of a colony of 300 million Argentine ants. 30 years ago, a researcher brought this alien species to Toulouse. Then a few insects managed to escape. They multiplied very successfully. I love doing this. Every time you lift a stone, it's a bit like a treasure hunt. I'm trying to find the queen and the brood. The brood, that's the little babies of the ants. It's very exciting. And this is why I'm never afraid to find spiders or anything else. Argentine ants are ideal research objects because they have particularly sophisticated logistics. They can't see very well, but they have an acute sense of smell. Ants mark their trails with scents, so-called pheromones. If an ant discovers food, it runs back to the nest to get reinforcements. In doing so, it marks its path. The others follow its trail and also mark the path. The ants that follow the shortest route are the fastest. Their path is therefore marked more frequently. After a short while, it smells most intensely, and all ants select this route. A simple yet brilliant way to solve a logistical problem. But how fail-safe is it? Audrey de Sautour wants to put the little transport geniuses to a test. We're at the University of Gießen in Germany. In the university's greenhouse, Andreas Wilczynska's team breeds ladybirds. One ladybird can eat up to 300 aphids a day. This is why for centuries, farmers have welcomed their presence and considered them lucky. The larvae are particularly voracious. They attack everything edible. Their appetite is insatiable. This is especially true for the larvae of the Asian ladybird. It displaces endemic species worldwide. But why? In the laboratory, Andreas Wilczynskas and his team prepare an experiment. They put an older, bigger larva of a European ladybird together with a younger, smaller larva of an Asian relative. The result is what the researchers have expected. The bigger one eats the smaller one. But then, something remarkable happens. The biggest enemies of ladybirds are other ladybirds. Wherever larger ladybird larvae find eggs or smaller larvae, they will eat them. And we've observed that whenever native ladybirds eat Asian ladybirds, they die. But the other way round, nothing happens. Apparently, the larva of the Asian ladybird has a powerful bioweapon that kills anyone that tries to eat it. Andreas Wilczynskas examines the blood, the so-called hemolymph of the insect. It's full of microscopic parasites. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was so surprised. I've been researching insects and their immune systems for 20 years. I've investigated thousands of insects. I've never seen anything like it. I've only seen images like these in insects that were dead and full of pathogens, but I've never seen this in a live animal that flies, reproduces, and so on. The Asian ladybird must have an extremely powerful immune system. But how does its defense mechanism work? At Tufts University in Boston, the scientists have managed to extract a silk thread from the drop. The secret was finding the right level of air humidity.
There's got to be a way to maybe build a
little humidity.
a micro humidity chamber.
Now they are able to spin a continuous, strong thread from liquefied silk. But a few doors further down, they're already working on the next exciting application.
There's a bit of the inside porosity.
Yeah.
This 3D printer is programmed to produce an artificial bone from liquid silk. The advantage is that the human body doesn't reject the organic material. The silk mixture in the printer is designed to dissolve after a few months. Until then, the body has covered the silk scaffolding with bone cells and created a new human bone.
We'll put it into the oven, and it'll become a green body, and then after that we'll sinter it, and that's when it really gets the hardness.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Great. It's a beautiful process, the transition from a liquid suspension to a solid format of material. But the pragmatics are that our bones, our organs, are very multi-scale, complex organisms. And so out of that wide array of possibilities, you need to match something at all scales in order for it to integrate as if it were part of the living system. That is a very significant challenge. So is it going to be a reality? Probably. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely.
Until now, the implant only exists in the lab. But the researchers at Tufts University have achieved a breakthrough. They have proven that in principle, soft silk can be transformed into hard bone. In Toulouse, Audrey Dussatour wants to put her aunt's logistical skills to the test. First, she prepares a special meal for them. The red liquid contains 30% sugar, but the green one only 0.1%. The insects are offered both food sources at the same time on identical tables. The paths to the food sources are also of the same length. So this time, the ants don't have to find the shortest way, but discover the best food source. First, the ants begin to explore the new structure. They quickly discover the two bridges and the dishes with the two different sugar solutions. There's a lot of traffic on both bridges, but after an hour, nearly all ants drink from the high-concentrate red sugar solution. The other dish is virtually deserted. The interesting thing is the simplicity of the system. The ants don't need to compare the food sources. The better the food, the more intensely they mark the path. An ant climbing up the pillar doesn't know that at the end of one of the bridges there is food of a particularly good quality. It doesn't need to know. It simply follows the stronger pheromone trail. The system is really simple. According to the quality of the food source, the ants produce more or fewer pheromones. It's a system that's very easy to communicate to the whole colony. The ants' fail-safe system is of particular interest to logistics engineers. Engineers at the Fraunhofer Institute for Material Flow and Logistics in Dortmund, Germany, are developing a swarm of self-governing transport vehicles. Their task, to transport and store goods in a large warehouse. The robots behave like an ant colony. If you think about dynamic systems with fast-changing conditions, for example in electronic commerce, then swarms are superior because they're able to adapt quickly. And our ants have taken that principle from nature, to react quickly, to dynamically respond to change. The robots have to fetch boxes and take them to packing stations. It's a competitive system, and they need to bid for every job. The first machine signals that it's close by. The second one has a fuller battery. But the third one may get the job because it can carry out another job along the way. However, this sometimes leads to strange situations. Robot 49 has disappeared.
Alles noch okay?
No trace of 49. The problem is that we're giving these vehicles a certain amount of autonomy, and autonomy means acting independently. And just like when you ask a person to do something for you, you don't always know what's going on in this person's head. They act according to their own free will. We have to keep that in mind and adapt our algorithm so that everything works the way we want. Number 49 is hiding behind a stack of crates.
Ja, dann ist leer.
The battery is empty, so it wasn't the algorithm's fault. Just like ants, the robots follow the trails of other robots. But these are marked with Wi-Fi signals instead of with pheromones. However, if the robots encounter an obstacle, they're at their wits' end. For security reasons, they stop immediately when something blocks their way. A swarm of ants would simply walk around the crate, discover a new path, and mark it with pheromones. The robot, however, needs a little help. The Asian ladybird in Gießen still hasn't revealed the secret of its powerful immune system, but the scientists are close to solving the riddle. They want to infect the beetle with particularly aggressive germs. To do so, they fix it under the microscope. They suspect that the beetle's blood, its hemolymph, contains effective substances against multi-drug resistant bacteria, so-called superbugs. The ladybird's immune system immediately reacts to the infectious germs. It discharges small molecules that attack the intruders and render them harmless. These molecules have huge potential for the development of new drugs. What is the exact nature of these substances? First, the researchers must obtain a small amount of the ladybird's blood. However, they don't need to prod it with a needle, it's enough to briefly shake it. As a defense reaction, the beetle releases small amounts of its bitter-tasting hemolymph, and with it, tiny quantities of the unknown germ-killing substances. While the ladybird recovers from its white-knuckle ride, the scientists prepare the mass spectrometer in the university's lab. This machine is the sharpest tool in their box. This is pure science. We gain new knowledge that we didn't have before. This is when science is fun. We're just like astronomers looking into the sky with telescopes, only we use this tool to look at small details, molecules. Astronomers may also only see curves and bars on their computers, and we look into the microcosm of the insect world. Where are all those useful substances, and how can we use them for the benefit of humanity? The team will now try to artificially reproduce the ladybird's antimicrobial substances. Then they will send them to Rhode Island Hospital in the US for further research. Clinics are in urgent need of new, powerful antibiotics. Back at Tufts University's Silk Lab in Boston, the silkworms only need one thing to grow and produce their miracle material: mulberry leaves. For 4 weeks, they chomp their way through the foliage, increasing their original body weight 10,000-fold. The fact that the researchers have found a way to make silk liquid again has opened up completely new possibilities. The liquid-based material can be easily combined with medicines and shaped into new forms. The researchers have discovered that drugs integrated into the silk structure stay active for longer. This opens up new possibilities for transporting and storing vaccines, for example, without having to worry about refrigeration. And since silk becomes hard and stable when dry, the list of applications seems endless. Like this microneedle patch, for example.
So you have the opportunity of taking a robust material like silk that allows you to have these very favorable mechanical properties and that is water-based. And so as you start with the solution, you add a therapeutic inside the solution and then you form it into a microneedle patch. Means that you have the therapy and the delivery mechanism in one single format. And so then you apply it and hopefully you're done.
The researchers are constantly developing new applications for silk. The material is not only durable and biodegradable, it can also be combined with microelectronics.
Speculating about the future, there's a medical side that is really predicated on the fact that you have a material that interfaces well with living tissue. But beyond the medical, if you really think forward, you can eat sensors, and they will communicate and tell you how tell you something about your food, whether the food is good or not, whether it's time to throw it away, whether you're healthy. And it's not only about silk. I think it's going to be about a general platform based on naturally derived materials. You may have a phone that you can plant in your garden when you're done using it. Who knows?
So one day, silk could become an environmentally friendly alternative to plastic, and thus help solve our waste problem. At the Natural History Museum in Karlsruhe, Germany, an unusual meeting takes place. The architect Achim Mengers has come to see the insect researcher Thomas van der Kamp. He's interested in an insect that many consider a pest. They're interested in the Colorado potato beetle. Achim Mengers is a professor of architecture and computer-aided design at the University of Stuttgart in Germany. By studying insects, he wants to discover new design principles and create innovative structures. Farmers fear the Colorado potato beetle because it can cause serious crop damage. It also has a very hard shell. Its striking yellow and black wing cases protect the sensitive hind wings, which it uses for flying. The wing cases must be both tough and light, otherwise the beetle couldn't fly. The architect is interested in the structure of these cases.
In nature,
we find totally different construction principles to those found in the history of engineering or architecture. This allows us to think outside the box and question the way we look at things. We discover new principles and go beyond what we know. In order to uncover the secret of the beetle's wings, the two scientists take the insect to the Institute of Technology in Karlsruhe. The institute has a gigantic particle accelerator. It produces extremely precise X-ray radiation. The scientists want to use it to analyze the beetle's wing structure. This is the speciality of insect expert Thomas van der Kamp. The X-ray images show that the wing case of the potato beetle consists of 2 separate shells and is hollow inside. An extremely lightweight construction. Small columns connect the upper and lower halves of the wing. Between them are large cavities. The bright spots show the places where the 2 shells are connected. The wing case of the potato beetle consists of closely interwoven fibers. The architect is especially interested in the columns between the 2 shells, which are formed by thick bundles of fibers. They transfer the forces between the upper and the lower shells. From these columns, the fibers spread out in many different directions. This network of fibers makes the structure both light and sturdy.
I think that
on the one hand we marvel at what nature has created. On the other hand, we wonder why this idea hasn't cropped up in engineering before. And thirdly, we realize that this is a simple solution that we can copy relatively easily. This makes it so exciting. Achim Mengers wants to use the beetle wings design as the basis for a new structure. Just like the wing case of the potato beetle, this structure must be light and stable. However, the architect doesn't know how to design the load-bearing components. The beetle has not yet revealed the exact arrangement of the fibers. In Toulouse, Audrey de Sautour is still trying to outsmart her ants. She's thought up something new to produce an insect traffic jam. Again, she uses sugar solution to attract the insects. And again, their path leads over a narrow bridge. But this time, it's riddled with obstacles. This is a bridge with small pillars. We want to find out whether these obstacles cause bottlenecks, or whether they rather help to structure the traffic and thus increase the speed of the ants. The ants discover the bridge and explore the new terrain. Then the first ones return to the nest and report that they've found food. Again, the pheromone trail leads others to the sugar solution. More and more ants run across the bridge. But surprisingly, the columns don't obstruct the flow of traffic. If an ant encounters a pillar, it walks around it, and the ant that comes towards it goes around the other way, a fluid system. An easy flow of traffic. Ants can do it, but can we? We're in Dresden, Germany. This junction in the north of the city has always caused problems, especially during rush hour. At the Technical University of Dresden, traffic planners are looking into the problem. Okay, we're in the north of Dresden. This road connects the city centre with the airport and with various industrial and residential areas. Stefan Lemmer wants to install traffic lights that decide for themselves what to do, just like ants do. A situation arises. When there's traffic, the traffic light knows best what to do, without consulting a central control system. Instead, it looks at the local situation and resolves it. Just like in an ant colony, there is no central control. Using sensors, each traffic light knows how many cars are coming from which direction. A line of 3 cars gets the green light when only 2 cars are coming from the other direction. But as soon as they have passed, the other cars get to go. The traffic light decides what to do. And not just that, it also has a soft spot for singles. If a car has been waiting for a long time because there was a constant flow of cars coming from other directions, its pressure increases. The traffic light plans for this. After a while, the pressure of the blue cars is so high that the traffic light briefly changes to release the two waiting cars. When they've passed, the traffic light immediately changes back. The traffic light also promotes public transport. Trams always get a green light. When Stefan Lemmer first proposed the idea, he had to face a lot of skepticism. If I hand over control to a system that only reacts to situations according to what it senses, then I operate on uncertain ground, because detectors can fail. Of course, you worry whether it makes sense to operate a system on such a basis, because this is real traffic that needs to flow. The city has to work. So can we trust the system? A few additional sensors need to be installed to provide the traffic lights with sufficient information. Then the system goes live. Traffic in a big city is notoriously difficult to control. Today is a good example. During our test run, construction workers suddenly block off one of the two left-turn lanes. Normally, this would have caused gridlock, but it doesn't. The system takes traffic as it comes. If there are roadworks like today or traffic is blocked, we simply have a different situation, and the system automatically adapts its green phases. Together with a colleague, Stefan Lemmer wants to evaluate the traffic flow. Dresden's traffic planners had already tried to optimize the previous conventional system. They were sure that they had reached the end of the line. So Stefan's autonomous traffic light had to measure up to the latest, most powerful, centrally controlled system, with astonishing results. We've managed to significantly reduce waiting times for all types of traffic. For cars by about 30%. For pedestrians by about 40%. For cyclists by about a third. And for public transport, we managed to reduce waiting times by 80%. This is ant logic at its best. Establish clever rules and then decide autonomously. Rhode Island Hospital in the US is the next stop for the ladybirds' antibiotic substances.
We received the peptide from Andreas. So this is a peptide that Andreas found that has anti-pseudomonal activity, which is very exciting. He sent us...
Professor Milanakis is the chief of infectious diseases at Rhode Island Hospital. He and his student Tori Kinnaman are researching multi-drug resistant bacteria.
For what we need.
Conventional drugs are increasingly useless in the fight against multi-drug resistant bacteria, so-called superbugs. Every year, more than 20,000 people die from superbug infections in the US alone.
Hello, Mr. Idamarco.
Hello.
I'm Tori. I'm a student researching MRSA. This is Dr. Milanakis. He's the Chief of Infectious Disease at Rhode Island Hospital.
Mr. Idamarco has been in hospital for almost a year.
Foot is infected again. I took the toes. Well, they took the ankle. So it's a straight line.
No antibiotic could stop the infection. In the end, the doctors had to amputate the leg to save Mr. Idamarco's life.
For us, it's a failure. It's a failure. We cannot see it in any other way. We should have been able to have options to help patients with these kinds of infections, more choices, better antibiotics to give. There are a lot of patients that become septic and we lose them. So we feel a sense of deep failure.
For decades, doctors have combated bacteria with antibiotics. But they've grown resistant to conventional drugs. That's why scientists are desperately looking for new substances like those derived from ladybirds. Tori Kinnaman wants to test them in the lab as quickly as possible. Tori herself almost died from a superbug infection a few years ago. Over in Germany, the Colorado potato beetle has become the architect's favorite brain teaser. They've managed to fully analyze its light yet stable wing structure. Now they try to apply their new knowledge. We have to check how we can adapt the winding system to different geometrical configurations. This isn't trivial, I must say. The layers have to touch each other with a decent amount of contact force. Never mind computers. Achim Mengers uses a simple wooden thread model to try out his ideas. It's important to note that the beetle doesn't tell us everything. Rather, it allows us to discover certain basic construction principles. Now we can apply these construction principles in a multitude of ways. It's fun to see how many different shapes we can create, and we can guess in a certain way what the overall construction might look like, what the outcome is. The architects have used the beetle wing's pillars to design pentagons. They form the basic building blocks of the structure.
Hier haben wir jetzt die Spannungen in einem so ein Element simuliert. Hier sieht man die.
Here we've simulated the stresses acting on such an element. You can see the magnitude and the direction of the stresses. And here we can see what the entire structure will look like. The beetle wing pavilion consists of carbon and glass fibers. Computer-controlled robots produce the individual elements. The final structure is put up on the university's campus in Stuttgart. Normally, this would be the end of such an architectural experiment. But then, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London commissions a new, even bigger pavilion. In Toulouse, the ants simply refuse to get stuck in traffic jams. But then, Audrey Dussautour observes something odd. Some ants suddenly stop in the middle of the road, a hidden system.
I
don't think the ants are aware of their traffic problems. This is something that happens on an individual level. My hypothesis is that the ants stop because traffic becomes too heavy. Perhaps there are too many collisions that force some ants to stop. And these ants then form obstacles that structure the traffic. They are trained to stay there. It's not yet clear how the ants know when to stop and regulate their own traffic. Audrey Dussautour wants to continue studying the insects and their behavior. The ants probably have many more tricks that could help us with our traffic problems. At least, Audrey now has an explanation for why they have no traffic jams. The ants have a common goal. They're looking for food, which they then carry with them to share with their peers. Their system only works because they work together. They're interested in cooperating. If you compare this with our car or pedestrian traffic, you realize that everyone has their own goals and motivations. There is no real interest to cooperate. More cooperation and less egotism would probably help us too. Ants show that on this basis, even highly complex societies can function efficiently. At the University of Stuttgart, the fabrication of the new beetle pavilion is entering its decisive phase. According to a pre-programmed pattern based on the potato beetle design, a robot winds resin-impregnated glass and carbon fibers onto a steel frame. An engineer always keeps one finger on the emergency stop button in case a thread slips off and the robot produces a rat's nest of fibers. When the construction has dried, the steel frame will be removed, leaving only the hardened fibers. They will form the supporting elements of the roof. The glass and carbon fibers will bear the load of the building. As a protection against rain, large plexiglass panels are put on top. It's quite an amazing moment to see the structure emerge, because we haven't actually seen its real shape before. It emerges during the manufacturing process, through the interaction of all those fibers that influence each other. But not everything's going according to plan. The robot was stopped because the carbon fibers have become tangled. It takes a long time to re-thread the machine. But the team is under pressure. The Victoria and Albert Museum must set up the pavilion soon as part of its engineering season. It's hard to believe that this huge structure is modelled on the tiny wing of a potato beetle. I think what we do here is very simple compared to what nature does. But of course, we can observe how nature works, how it aligns fibers according to the acting forces. Each element was designed individually according to its position in the pavilion roof and the forces acting on it. Elements on the edge must bear less load than elements in the center. The architects assembled the elements into a larger structure. Later in London, 40 of these elements will form the roof. The structure is sturdier than expected. Nothing breaks. Nothing bends. The great day has come. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London gets its new pavilion. The whole roof, everything you see, weighs about as much as 2 square meters of the facade of this brick building. The whole roof weighs 2.5 tons. Just to give you an idea, it looks quite big and solid, but it's super light. Piece by piece, the elements are assembled into a 200 square meter pavilion. However, the workers have difficulties tightening the screws, which slows down the construction work. There are always unexpected situations and unexpected moments on site. It's part of this large experiment in experimental architecture. But with each element, the workers are getting better at assembling the innovative structure. And so, they managed to complete the Beetle Pavilion in 10 days, just in time for the opening of the exhibition. Nature is an incredibly huge reservoir of ideas and creative possibilities. It makes us see things from a different perspective. It shows us how to do things that we wouldn't have done using our conventional wisdom and our normal catalogue of technical solutions. The Beetle Pavilion is the main attraction in the courtyard of the museum. Few visitors are aware that this building is modelled on the wings of a small beetle that has been considered a pest for centuries. At Rhode Island Hospital, Tori Kinnaman is starting to test the ladybird antibiotic on wax moths. During her first year in college, Tori herself became infected with superbugs, because without knowing it, she belongs to a high-risk group.
Nice!
Gymnasts share changing rooms and sports equipment, and they frequently suffer small injuries, an ideal entry point for bacteria and other germs.
Nice, Steph! Woo! Here you go, Julia.
While being a member of Brown University's gymnastics team, Tori got an infection. This 60-centimeter long scar is a reminder of what happened.
It was red, very swollen, very hot to the touch. I came down with flu-like symptoms, and something inside me just told me that something wasn't right. So I went to the emergency room at Rhode Island Hospital, and they diagnosed it as MRSA. And I remember turning to my dad and just asking him, "Dad, are they going to have to amputate my leg?" And I was so scared to ask him the question because I was scared to hear the answer. They saved my leg, but ultimately they saved my life as well.
That's why Tori Kinnaman dedicates herself to fighting multi-drug resistant bacteria. Perhaps she will achieve a breakthrough with the active ingredients derived from the ladybird's immune system. First substances based on other insects have already been successfully tested in mice, and the first clinical trials are underway. Insects have this incredible ability to adapt. With more than 1 million species, you can find something special in each and every one of them. Insects are like a huge medicine cabinet. The question is, how can I use them to benefit mankind? Insects are the most successful life form on the planet. They've managed to adapt to the most diverse environments and found ingenious solutions to seemingly insoluble problems. We should not just see them as pests and annoyances, but also for what they are: clever survival artists and nature's little superheroes.